All right. How are you
Good
this morning? You good?
I'm good. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's do it. Hi, and welcome to Politics in a Movie with your hosts, Doug and Mike. I'm Doug.
And I'm Mike.
And this week's episode, Term Limits and the Matrix. A quick mention to our tech guy extraordinaire, Frenchie. He does our editing and tech stuff.
Hi, Frenchie.
And Mike, this is exciting. This is our third episode, and we now have some comments from listeners.
Okay.
Frenchie has been putting those together for us. He's shouldered that burden of reading those comments. And let me just say that not all comments are, shall we say, supportive in spirit.
Oh.
Yeah, that's surprising. And Frenchie does his best to insulate us from comments that can be particularly toxic, or as he likes to call them, merde.
Okay.
So, I just like to do a little public service announcement for those of you out there who feel that you're criticized unfairly sometimes. It can negatively impact your mental health, and we'd like to support you by letting you know that we support the courage and conviction to stick to your principles and values regardless of what other people say.
Righto.
The more you know. All right. So before we get into the comments there, Mike, what kind of guy are you? Are you a good news first or bad news first kind of guy?
Oh, give me the bad news first.
All right, good. Yeah. I like bad news. Well, I don't know how Frenchie's organized them, but I was just curious.
All right.
All right. So here they come in. I'm going to read the first one is from unknown. They didn't give their name or information. And the comment is, I like Mike.
Oh.
So did you plant that, Mike?
It wasn't me.
All right.
It wasn't me, but
so that's a supportive.
Nice to know I have admirers.
Yeah, that's a supportive comment.
Sure.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask Frenchie to give us the next one.
From Sally in North Dakota, sometimes your podcast is too slow.
Well, that's an interesting one. Yeah, what do you think about that? I mean, listen, we're just learning here. We're starting out. We're not professional podcasters per se.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a little slow. We could try talking a little quicker. What do you think? Mike, do you feel comfortable talking a little faster as we do this episode?
Sure, I could do that.
All right, we'll try. We'll try, Sally. Thanks for that one. All right, so here's two that sort of have a similar thing. One is from Whiskers in Chicago. You should play sound clips instead of quoting them. And then Wise Guy 98 says, I like the sound clips. Well, that's nice. It's nice to get feedback on sound clips.
That's interesting that they both commented on sound clips, or was that Frenchie who put them together?
He put them together, yeah.
I see. Okay.
But, so just so everyone knows, Frenchie is in charge of our sound clips. Sometimes we'll give him suggestions. And also, playing sound clips instead of quoting them. Listen, Mike and I are just riffing here. We're talking. So we like to quote movies sometimes. Frenchie puts in those sound clips after the fact. That's called editing. So we're not really aware of what's happening while we're talking here. And, listen, he could be putting in a sound clip right now, and we have no idea. Just FYI. If you like the sound clips, God bless you. But we're still going to be quoting things.
Sure.
All right, Frenchie, I think we're ready for the next one.
From Bridget Cow, Biden just turned 81, not 80. Oh, you're correct. I made that mistake in our previous episode that I said that he had his 80th birthday or that he had just turned 80 when he actually turned 81. So
right.
My bad.
Yes, and that's going to happen. We're not professional news organization here. We do our best to try to be accurate.
Right.
All right. And here's the last one from Gold Star 9. Is Frenchie a nickname? If so, it should be in quotes. I assume they're referring to our webpage where we have our names there. Yes, Frenchie is a nickname. We affectionately call him Frenchie to keep his identity private. It's what he calls his nom de plume.
I think you're revealing a little bit maybe about where he's from or, his ethnic background. I'm not going to try to give away too much here, but
that's right. Yeah, we try not to give too many spoilers.
Yeah.
Thank you, listeners, for those comments. Keep them coming. And with that, Mike, why don't we jump into your segment, term limits?
Sure. Well, so I chose term limits mostly because first I had thought of the last time we talked, we talked about the 1980 election and how that was such a turning point and a change from Carter to Reagan. Really, there was the 84 was the next election. Reagan was reelected. It was kind of like rinse and repeat. And so I thought 88 would be an interesting election to talk about. And that had so many things going on. But one thing that happened was Reagan was the first president since Eisenhower to face presidential term limits. They were they were passed, and ratified by the states back in 1951. And so when Eisenhower ran, or when Eisenhower was finishing his term in 1960, he was prohibited from running. And so we know now that Nixon ran. Nixon was Eisenhower's vice president. He ran against John F. Kennedy. Kennedy won in 1960. But we hadn't had a president who was term limited until 1988. Reagan was prohibited from running. So his vice president, much like Eisenhower's vice president Nixon, his vice president George Bush Sr., we call him sometimes, George H.W. Bush, ran. He had an opponent, Pat Robertson, the evangelist, ran against him. There may have been some others whose names were brought up. I don't think Pat Buchanan, maybe he was later in 92. I don't know.
Pat Buchanan. Yeah, I remember Pat Buchanan. I remember that name from like that old talk show, the McLaughlin Report.
From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original.
Yeah, McLaughlin Group. That was we don't need to get into that. But that was a show of the time, a politics show. But on the Democratic side, there was a big crowd, and there were names that were brought up prior to the election, prior to the primaries, like Bill Clinton. His name had been brought up, and he decided not to run. As we all know, he ran again 4 years later in 92.
Right.
And Mario Cuomo was the big elephant in the room that people were waiting to make the decision. And he waited and waited. He put it off and he put it off. And finally, he said he wasn't going to run. And he was a little mysterious about it. The thought was, what is it? What is his skeleton that he doesn't want to reveal? Perhaps there's nothing, perhaps he just didn't want the scrutiny, but he did not run. And he was the Italian from New York, Cuomo. Okay. And another kind of Mediterranean from the Northeast, Mike Dukakis, ran, a Greek American from the Boston area. He was the governor of Massachusetts. So he was kind of like Cuomo light, a lot of people thought. And the topic of the conversation is, of course, term limits. So this is the result of term limits, is there was a bunch of people that jumped into the race. There was Dukakis, there was Gary Hart, who was in and then out. He had a little scandal where he was pictured. He was pictures of him were taken with a woman who wasn't his wife. I don't know much more than that.
But back then that's all it had to be. The one controversy.
And then, and others like Bill Clinton later, he stuck it out. There were, little rumors here and there about his dalliances maybe with women, and he just stuck it out. He stuck it through impeachment.
Right. The term limits, is it a law? Was it a law put in place?
Yeah. Well, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he was president during really tough times. The Depression is when he was first elected to the presidency, and then World War II. And so it was such stressful times for the country that I think people wanted to stick with him, and he's very popular. And he, guided us through the Depression and through World War II, and was elected 4 times.
Right.
And previously, it had been a tradition, not a law, that you would resign after your second term. Every other president, beginning with Washington, if they got elected to a second term, that would be their last term. And they would decline to run for a third term.
Yeah, kind of an understood rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, tradition. And it's funny these days, there's lots of cases of somebody ignoring past tradition and saying, well, it's not a law, so I can do it.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing that these laws get put into place, because you cannot just keep assuming that people in the future will respect tradition.
Right.
So back then, when they put that law into place, was there a bit, what spurred it? I mean, was there a controversy at the time, or were people upset that he might be running again, or how did that come into play?
Well, he wasn't running again because he died.
Oh, okay.
He died and was replaced by Truman, who was his vice president. But I think there was some concern that he had won 4 times. He was elected 4 times.
Right.
And there were those that thought, I don't know that we want that to happen again. You have so much of an advantage as an incumbent, as a president,
Right.
So those are the thoughts on that, And I think I agree that 2 terms is probably a good number of terms. 8 years, that's a long time to have.
Yeah, that is a long time. Yeah. I guess I'm confusing term limits with term.
Yes. House of Representatives is 2 years and the Senate is 6 and the president is 4. So the founders did that on purpose, to stagger the number of years that each branch are in office. And then in the Senate, they've got 2 classes. It's not everybody's not up for election the same time. So every 6 years, there's a new class, they call it, of senators who are up.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, because those can stagger out. It's not like precisely every 6 years. Right. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And I guess I sort of feel sorry. I mean, I can't believe that I'm actually feeling sorry for Congress people, but to have to run every 2 years. I mean, it's basically you get probably 6 months of being able to get stuff done, and then you've got to start campaigning again.
Right. It's tough. You're always campaigning and raising money.
Yeah.
In the House. But there are those who, some might argue that term limits are taking away an option for voters. Like maybe you like your legislator and you allow him to run for a 3rd term, you're taking a choice away from the voters.
You know what I think would be interesting, Mike, is if they have forced office for certain people. So instead of having term limits, what they should do is they should say, put people's names in a hat that meet certain criteria, and then say, hey, we just picked your name. You have to be a congressman for 2 years now. It'd be like the Hunger Games.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
But no one would die. My theory is that someone who doesn't want to be in power can probably be trusted with it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, has this segment run into its term limit?
I think it has.
All right.
I think it has.
Okay. So the movie for this episode is The Matrix. So, Mike, if for those listeners out there, if you haven't seen the film, you really should pause our show and see it first. And do not blame us for spoilers on a movie that's almost 25 years old. So, The Matrix, released in 1999. It was written by what was back then the Wachowski brothers. But interesting trivia, Mike, is that they're now, both of them are trans women, and they go just by the Wachowskis now.
Interesting. That is very interesting.
Yeah, and I just mentioned that because I think it's an interesting historical note on the film.
Yeah.
So, I do wonder if they were twins, actually. I'm not sure. Frenchie, you want to dig that up for us, please? And as a team, as the Wachowskis, or, I guess back then, Wachowski brothers is really how they were known. But the Wachowskis, they were behind a number of films that you'd probably recognize over the years. Their first one was the movie Bound back in 96, starring Jennifer Tilly.
Oh.
And that was like a film noir kind of scene with crime and violence, and it was, it got really good critical reviews back then, and it starred Joe Pantoliano, who plays also in The Matrix. He plays Cypher. So the Wachowskis liked working with that actor. Interesting trivia: this guy Joe Pantoliano, he's also known, Mike, as Joey Pants. And apparently, listen, I struggled saying his last name just now. but I guess when he was a kid, people had a hard time pronouncing his last name, and they just shortened it to Pants instead of Pantoliano. So interesting story there. They're also known for that movie V for Vendetta, if you've heard of that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Frenchie is chiming in here. They are not twins. They are 2 years apart.
Okay.
Now, so The Matrix, I think most people associate The Matrix with Keanu Reeves, who plays Neo. So here's a quick name association game for you, Mike. When I say Keanu Reeves, what pops into your head is another film that he's done?
Oh, the surfer one? Point Break, yeah.
Point Break, yeah. Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, that's one of his early ones. I'll always think of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yeah.
Excellent!
I think a lot of people agree that Keanu Reeves just really did a great job in that role. But you know who was also considered to play Neo? Will Smith.
Oh, he would have been good.
Yeah, he would have been interesting. But he actually declined to go do the movie Wild Wild West. And I don't know if that was his best decision. Another person considered was Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
But, I have to say, Mike, what movie has Nicolas Cage not been considered for? That guy's all over the place. And then lastly, Leonardo DiCaprio. He actually accepted the role. And then when he learned that it had a lot of special effects, he then turned it down. He didn't like the concept of a lot of visual effects. Apparently, he thought Titanic had too many for his taste. Looking back on it, and he didn't want to do another movie with a lot of visual effects. When I think back to Titanic, I don't really, it doesn't really strike me as memorable in the effects department, but I guess that's the beauty of special effects. In some case, you don't even notice them.
Yeah.
Special effects isn't always lightsabers and aliens. Also, some other performances, notable performances in this movie. Lawrence Fishburne.
Oh, yeah.
Plays Morpheus, and he's just wonderful. They also considered in that role Samuel L. Jackson and Val Kilmer. Both those actors I like, but I think Lawrence Fishburne was perfect.
Yeah. Well, he and Sam Jackson often get confused.
I guess
We'll mix them up, yeah.
I guess they could be, yeah. Lawrence Fishburne, he's got a great voice, and he's done a lot of stage work too, and that really helps with your voice. Now, another actor who does a tremendous job is Hugo Weaving. He plays Agent Smith in the movie.
Okay.
And Hugo Weaving, I don't know if he was well known for many things prior, but he went on to some other films. I think he was in Lord of the Rings later. Who can ever forget his performance in the film and his cadence and the way he speaks, and him saying the line, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
So when Agent Smith captures Neo early in the film, he puts him in an interrogation room. And just the way he delivers the dialogue as he's interrogating Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just delicious. You can savor each word he says just because of his delivery. And he's reading a binder and just, he almost talks like a demented AI, because he pauses and he slows down and he articulates very specifically. And one of my favorite lines there is where he's saying to Neo, you seem like a good fellow. You even help your landlady take out the trash.
Help your landlady carry out her garbage.
And just, the way he enunciates each word and delivers that scene is perfection. So I love that guy's work, and also The Matrix, Mike. It's known for its groundbreaking work in special effects, with what is now known as bullet time. If you're familiar with that, that's where they kind of freeze the frame and the camera spins around, and that really wasn't done before this film.
So that thing with the bullet was an effect. That wasn't.
That's right. Yeah, it was effect. Yes. In the 50s, actors actually had to dodge real bullets. And listen, for those for you nerds out there, the special effects were created on a cluster of Unix computers running FreeBSD.
Wow.
Now, on the Oscar awards level, you're probably wondering, Mike, as you usually do, what awards did this film win?
What awards did it win, Doug?
Well, the film, it actually was nominated for 4 categories, and it won all 4.
Huh.
And those categories are Best Visual Effects, best film editing, best sound, and best sound editing.
Wow.
So visual effects, and we all know they created bullet time, so they certainly should win that. And the sound was really good. Another few things that the film did, or is known for, is it made popular the phrase "taking the red pill." Have you heard that phrase?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, because in the film, Morpheus presents Neo with a decision: either take the red pill or take the blue pill, to indicate what choice he wants as to whether stay in the Matrix or go into reality. Taking the red pill indicates that he's accepting to choose reality. And in the film, when he's presented with those two pills, the visual shot, the directors just did a tremendous job. The shot is reflected in Morpheus's sunglasses. And you see in his sunglasses his two hands out. One hand has the red pill, one hand has the blue pill.
Why, oh, why didn't I take the blue pill?
It's just a really well done directorial shot.
Yeah.
And the film has a lot of really good visual shots, very good direction by the Wachowskis. I encourage, if folks are rewatching the movie, to really focus on that early scene where Keanu Reeves is in his office. So he's working in an office in the Matrix. Just the way the office is depicted, and the camera angles as it follows him as he's, discovering things and looking around. I kind of focused on that the other day, and it's really, really well directed.
Yeah.
There's another line in the film. There is no spoon is another popular line. He's trying to figure out how to control his powers in the Matrix. And there's like a little kid who's sort of a spiritualist. And he says to Neo, well, he shows him a spoon and he does the mind bending trick where the spoon melts. And Neo says, oh, how did you do that? And the kid says, the first thing you have to understand is there is no spoon.
Oh.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.
It's just a construct of your imagination, basically. And so once you realize it's not real, then you can control it. And so that phrase, there is no spoon, that can apply to a lot of things in life, Mike.
Like?
Well, I don't know, but if you encounter something in life that you think is an impossible hurdle, just say to yourself, there is no spoon.
There is no spoon.
Okay, so another interesting thing about the film is it depicts AI, artificial intelligence, like many movies these days, but it's it's one of the early ones. So it depicts AI a little interestingly in that AI is split into all sorts of segmented entities. So it's not just one encompassing AI. And they each can have their own personalities, and they're all doing their own things. And this actually happens in one of the later Matrix films. One of the AIs loves to curse in French. He relishes cursing in that language, which I think is just, a great thing to put in the film.
Like I love the French language. I have sampled every language. French is my favorite. Fantastic language. Especially to curse with. Nom de Dieu, de putain de bordel de merde de saloperie de connard d'enculé de ta mère. It's like wiping your ass with silk. I love it.
What do you think of that, Frenchie?
Oh my God. Frenchie loves cursing. So another interesting thing about the film, it was entirely filmed in Sydney, Australia.
Oh.
And there's lots of scenes, on buildings and in the surrounding area. And Mike, I have to tell you, the other day I was doing a Zoom call with somebody from Australia.
Uh-huh.
And they were doing the call from their apartment, and behind them was their window with a view out into the city and out into Sydney, Australia.
Wow.
And I swear to God, it was just like the Matrix. His view out his window was literally from, it looked exactly like the Matrix because, they filmed in Sydney. And I got to tell you, Mike, it made me doubt reality for a moment.
It wasn't a filter?
It was not a filter. It was not a fake background. He lives in Sydney, and it was out his actual window, and it was the Matrix.
Wow.
And lastly, we should note the martial arts scenes in this film,
Okay.
of which there's many, and they're really well done. And the cast trained for, I don't know, 6 months or more.
I know Kung Fu.
You know, they weren't using stunt doubles for many of these scenes. It was the actual actors carrying out these combat scenes. In many cases, having wires attached to them so they can make, you know, very high leaps. And I love the battle scenes. They're very well choreographed. And the final battle scene where Neo faces off with Agent Smith, they're facing each other down a long subway platform. The camera catches them from behind at waist level, where their hands are sort of itching, you know, to go into combat. Very similar to a Wild West movie.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah,
exactly. Very similar to like these movies in the '60s with Clint Eastwood, where, you know, they'd be facing each other down in the desert or something, and then in the old westerns, you'd usually see like a tumbleweed roll by, right?
Right.
And so in The Matrix, the directors had old newspaper, because it's a subway. Old newspaper kind of blows by in front of them right before they commence the battle. So it's just a really well choreographed scene from start to finish.
Yeah. How do you think The Matrix has stood the test of time? 1999, am I right? That
Yep.
was the year. Yeah. That's 24 years ago.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, they're going to be doing a 25-year anniversary, no doubt. But I think it stood up really well. The storyline is still relevant today. It depicts artificial intelligence in an interesting fashion that still has the possibility of existing.
Yeah, we're seeing the beginnings of AI.
Yeah. Well, hopefully when AI takes over, Mike will be long gone. Okay, well, Mike, I think we've covered everything for this episode.
Okay.
Well, for all of us here at Politics in a Movie, thank you for listening. And you can check out our website at politicsinAmovie.com. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Frenchie.
You hear that, Mr. Anderson? That is the sound of inevitability. Goodbye, Mr. Anderson. My name is Neo.